here we have the Tamron 4-12mm 1.2 C-mount lens. It is a lens made for security cameras, and being a C-mount lens, it is made for a much smaller sensor than your typical video DSLR, so it will cause heavy vignetting. However, luckily the GH2 and the AF100 both have a digital crop mode, which allows you to zoom in and get rid of the vignetting. Now with the crop mode enabled, you will effectively turn this into a 10 to 30mm lens, which is plenty wide still, but since you're using the digital crop mode feature, which utilizes only the middle portion of the sensor, you will have high ISO issues. So you want to keep the ISO as low as you can. I try to keep it on 160 as much as possible, whether you're shooting at 1/25th of a second in low light or using the nostalgic film setting on the GH2, which is the brightest of all the film modes. However, the 1.2 aperture allows you to shoot in very low light with a 160 setting. Luckily, you can shoot at dusk or at nighttime, provided there is enough street lights or store lights available. That being said, ISO 320 does not look bad at all. You will have only very minor grain in underexposed areas and probably might not even notice it. Also, ISO 640 to the 800 range is actually not that bad. This church shot I was pretty impressed at how little noise there was, even at 640 ISO using the crop feature. There is some noise in the sky where the saturated blues meet the blacks, but nothing noise reduction software like Neat Video can't take care of. There's one thing to keep in mind when adapting C-mount lenses on the GH2. Pretty much every C-mount adapter is meant for film lenses, lenses you find on the Bolex. The Tamron is specifically made for security cameras, and most of those lenses will not fit. What I did is I got a rounded metal file, and in a rocking motion going along the curves of the inner adapter, just sanded it down until the lens fit, and pretty much 40 minutes later I had a hole wide enough for the lens to fit into. My hand was kind of tired, to be honest, so I actually did sand down some of the lens itself, but luckily the casing of the lens can be detached by unscrewing it, so that way you don't get any metal dust on the lens element itself. Now this is a varifocal lens, so that means you have to reset the focus every time you zoom in and zoom out. It will fisheye a bit at the widest setting, but if you don't like the fisheye effect, all you have to do is zoom in a tiny bit and it'll straighten things out and you'll still have a very wide lens. The telephoto portion of the lens is, to be honest, not that great. If you zoom in all the way and your subject is like a few feet away from you, it will get soft. However, that's not to say the telephoto mode on the lens is completely useless. It is a very surprisingly good macro lens. You can literally touch the lens and still perfectly be in focus. Wide open, the lens performs fairly well. At the widest aperture, I have no problems using it wide open at the widest setting at all. Minimum focus distance at the widest setting is only 3 inches, and when using the lens wide open, your foreground subject is usually perfectly sharp, and you'll have a slight hint of glow in the out of focus background areas. Wide open on the telephoto end, it's very prone to flare, and I really do not recommend using it. However, if you're using the telephoto end as a macro, wide open isn't that big of a problem at all. One minor nuisance of this lens is that it doesn't have your typical zoom, focal length, or focus rings. They're all screw locked, so whenever you want to change your focus, your iris, you're going to have to screw and unscrew the rings, which can be annoying, and the screws can get loose every now and then. The aperture is square shaped, which is very odd and can produce some very unusual patterns in the out of focus and flare areas. You really don't see it at the wide setting, obviously, and when you're using it in the macro mode on a telephoto setting, you really don't notice the squares either. Okay, the build of the lens is plastic. It does make the lens very lightweight and prone to hand jitters when using it handheld. You can see some jitters even in shots that I shot handheld at the widest setting, so I try to get some support if you're using this lens. There really isn't a lens this wide or this fast on any camera, let alone the GH2. So for $90, not a bad toy to have. There are plenty of other C-mount lenses that are about this wide and this fast available. Most of them are probably going to have the same conversion process where you sand down the adapter and the lens. Just be sure when you go looking for other lenses that the lens is good for a 1/2 inch sensor or bigger. 1/3 of an inch or smaller is no good because it will not cover the GH2's sensor even using the digital crop mode, so get a 1/2 inch rated C-mount lens or bigger. Hopefully I'll make more of these videos in the future about obscure lenses or manual focus lenses in general. Hopefully this is of some help to people out there, and let me know what you think if you try this lens or any other C-mount lens.